I'm now going to talk about the great spruce bark beetle, Dendroctonus micans. This is a bark beetle which was accidentally introduced into Britain in 1982. It is now well established in the south and west of England and Wales and has recently spread to southern Scotland. Spruce is our most important commercial tree species, and managing this pest is a high priority. The photograph on the slide shows an adult great spruce bark beetle. Typically, they are light brown in colour when they emerge, but as they mature, their colour darkens to brown or black. Adult beetles are between 6 and 8 millimeters in length and 2.5 to 3 millimeters wide. In the bark beetle world, this is really quite a substantial size. When they're mature, they also have a covering of orange hairs, which you can see highlighted in this photograph. The large size of the bark beetle enables the females to withstand the tree defences as she bores through the bark to lay her eggs. Adult beetles tend to move with and between trees mainly by crawling. They crawl at a temperature above 12 degrees centigrade. Occasionally they fly if temperatures exceed 22.5 degrees C. The beetle has a long life cycle ranging from 12 to 18 months under British conditions. This results in an extensive overlap of generations, so it is possible to find any stage at any time of the year. However, there are periods, particularly in the winter, when most of the bark beetles that you find will be at the same stage. So what does the great spruce bark beetle do to our trees? Well, neither the beetle nor its larvae burrow into the wood itself, and consequently, provided that the wood is salvaged before the tree is completely dead, the timber is not spoiled in any way. Trees are killed by being completely girdled at one or more points along the stem, although this may take several years of sustained attack. The bark beetles bore under the bark, and by interrupting the flow of nutrients and water to the rest of the tree, they cause it to die back. The problem with this beetle is that large breeding populations can build up and spread before they're noticed, and certainly long before individual trees are killed. One of the reasons they're capable of building up such high population levels is because of sibling mating. This means that the adults are capable of mating with their siblings in early adulthood, and when the adult females go off to find a suitable new host, they're already fertilized and ready to lay eggs. This is an advantage over other bark beetles who need to find a host and then have to produce pheromones and attract a mate before they're able to lay eggs. Once the females find a suitable new host, they have to chew their way through the bark and lay their eggs in batches of 50 to 80 in interconnecting chambers. In this slide you can see a photograph showing the pearlescent eggs amongst frass in an egg chamber. Each female can produce up to 300 eggs in their lifetime. The eggs hatch and the larvae go through 5 larval stages or instars, each time becoming progressively larger. The larval egg chambers turn into larval feeding chambers, and usually the larvae feed communally, side by side, packing powdery woody debris or frass and diseased or dead larvae behind them into islands away from the main feeding site. The mixture of resin and frass forms a distinctive quilted pattern. The ability of the larvae to feed en masse can weaken and sometimes kill the tree, and is a great advantage against other beetles which feed individually. The larvae take it in turns to feed at the leading edge where the nutrition is greatest, and at the same time they backfill with frass to prevent any predators from sneaking up and attacking them from behind. The mass feeding represents a real assault on the tree. If you were to inspect a tree which had been attacked by the great spruce bark beetle, this is what you might find upon peeling back the bark. The image on the left-hand side illustrates the frass, which is a mixture of digested wood and other excretions from the larvae. On the right-hand side, you can see the larval feeding galleries, and all stages of the beetle, right through from egg to adult, may be present. You can also see how the frass has been packed into these very characteristic islands. This is really a feature of this beetle, and it's described as having a quilted appearance. So we've had a look at what is going on underneath the bark, but what would you see on the exterior of a tree which had been attacked by the great spruce bark beetle? Well, the symptom to look out for is this profuse resinosis on the trunk. The beetles will often attack the spruce trees where the branches meet the trunk, and here you can see resin dripping from a branch. On the right-hand side, the bark has been removed from this union, and you can see the dead and damaged tissue beneath, which has been caused by the beetle attack. Again, there is profuse resinosis on the exterior of the bark. Another feature of this pest that we can look for are the resin tubes, which are created when female beetles enter the bark. The resin tubes are highly characteristic and vary in colour from white and cream to shades of purple and brown. They may be accompanied by copious resin bleeds. You should inspect the bark around the resin tubes, particularly those that are purple to brown. You may find that there is a hollow sound if you tap the bark, which would indicate a successful attack beneath. Resin tubes at soil level are often accompanied by granular resin, which is very characteristic of a ground level attack by the great spruce bark beetle. Loose bark with exposed beetle galleries might indicate older infestations which have been attacked by woodpeckers. In terms of whole tree symptoms, you should be looking for isolated or small groups of dead or dying trees. The great spruce bark beetle obviously attacks spruce trees, but it particularly likes Norway spruce and Sitka spruce, and may also attack oriental spruce. It is worth paying particular attention to trees that have been damaged by pruning or thinning operations, as beetle attack may be encouraged by damage to stems and live branches. Browning foliage or thinning of canopy over some or all of the crown may indicate a beetle attack. In this photograph, there is a Norway spruce which is illustrating typical top death which has been caused by the great spruce bark beetle. In the event that you do discover an attack of the great spruce bark beetle, don't worry, there is actually a biological control available for this pest. The biological control is a host-specific predatory beetle called Rhizophagus grandis, which originates from the pest's natural range. The adult Rhizophagus beetles locate the larvae of the great spruce bark beetle and incapacitate them by biting them. They then lay their own eggs nearby, and when these hatch, the larvae feed voraciously on the immobilized larvae of the great spruce bark beetle. You can actually see the larvae feeding on a bark beetle larva in the image. In the past, it was a very expensive, difficult and time-consuming process to rear Rhizophagus grandis. However, considerable progress has been made improving the rearing system, and the resulting increase in efficiency and flexibility means that each adult Rhizophagus beetle now only costs around 10 pence to rear for release. In addition, because Rhizophagus grandis has an extremely well-developed ability to find its prey, together with a rapid reproductive rate, only small numbers of individuals are needed to control each new outbreak, typically around 100 adults per site. While Rhizophagus grandis will never entirely eliminate the great spruce bark beetle populations, they are capable of reducing them by between 80 and 90%. Research into the populations of the bark beetle in the original infested forests in Wales and the Marches has provided clear evidence that populations of the pest will reduce to virtually undetectable levels within 5 to 7 years of the release of Rhizophagus grandis. Tree mortality is now less than 1% and can be as low as 0.25%. Nevertheless, there are still small populations of the bark beetle present, which ensure the continuing survival of this efficient predator. Movement controls are still essential to prevent the introduction of the pest into protected zones elsewhere in the European Union. Should you discover a great spruce bark beetle population, normal high-risk biosecurity measures apply. 2 simple hygiene precautions should be taken to minimize the risk of accidental introduction and spread of this beetle into a pest-free area. The most important measure is not to remove any potentially infested wood from the site. Vehicles, including lorries and forestry machinery, should be cleaned of all plant debris, especially loose bark and branch wood or chips, before they start their journey to the pest-free area. The vehicle should also be checked again on arrival, and any such debris should be removed and safely disposed of. Remember, the adult beetles move within and between trees mainly by crawling if the temperature is above 12 degrees C, although they can occasionally fly if the temperature exceeds 22.5 degrees C.